As a covenantal faith tradition, our covenants are the way in which we practice our religion, and they are aspirational descriptions of how we want to be in the world. Please join as we recite BUC's covenant all together this morning, affirming what we as a congregation agree to as members of this community. As part of this beloved BUC community, I promise to strive to be my best self in all my interactions, assume the best intentions of everyone's actions, be mindful of our shared humanity in my communications, pause, reflect, and be part of the solution when things go awry. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Good morning. Birmingham Unitarian Church. It is good to be together again, whether you are joining us here in the sanctuary or remotely via Zoom, or watching this recording later. It is good to connect with you. As a multi-platform church, it is important for us to build a bridge between online and in-person participants. We call this connection opportunity greeting our virtual neighbors. First, we will project the image of the folks who are currently on Zoom up here on our screen and ask them to turn their cameras on and give us all a wave. Now we who are gathered in person in sanctuary will turn to face the camera in the back of the sanctuary and give them a wave. Whenever and however we connect with BUC, we are building BUC at home, on campus, in the world, every day. We are Birmingham Unitarian Church, and we are building community. We join with our other Unitarian Universalists around the world as we light our chalice. I will read in the meantime from At the Orphan's Door by Tom Hirons. Meanwhile, flowers still bloom. The moon rises and the sun. Babies smile, and somewhere, against all odds, two people are falling in love. Strangers share stories and jokes. Light plays on the surface of the water. Grace occurs on unlikely streets, and we hold each other fast against entropy, the fires, and the floods. Life leans toward the living, and while death claims all things in the end, there were such precious times between in which everything was radiant, and we loved, again, this world.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our first hymn this morning. It's one of those beautiful, beloved hymns in our hymnal, number 123, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
The theme for today's service is the spirituality of possibility. How do we, as Unitarian Universalists, think about and respond to possibilities? We have certainly put our faith in action to make real the possibilities for a better world. But what if what is possible is something bad? Not something good. Even more challenging, what if that which is possible could be both good and bad?
So the story for today's Time for All Ages comes from City Year's Founding Stories. And I've mentioned City Year a few times before. It's an AmeriCorps program. There's several sites across the country, even internationally, serving different communities, and particularly in schools. And these stories serve as inspiration for these young adults who are doing this hard work. And so this particular one is one of my favorites. And it's inspired me during my time serving AmeriCorps. And it's a story that I would tell my campers when we were at Mystic Lake YMCA camp. So I'm really excited to finally be sharing it with you all today. The story is known as Sand into Diamonds. And the author of these particular words that I'm going to be sharing is unknown, but it's adapted from the Parable of the Pebbles, if that's familiar to anyone. It doesn't come with illustrations, but I tried to create some with the help of artificial intelligence using ChatGPT. So, interestingly enough, as I was playing around, The character in the story is not named, but ChatGPT named her Salma. Once upon a time, there lived a brave young pilot. This pilot flew all over the world to interesting lands, meeting interesting people. One night, as the pilot was flying high above the Sahara Desert, the engine of her plane suddenly stalled. Amazingly, she was able to eject from the plane and parachute to the ground. As the pilot awoke the next day, she tried to remember what had happened the night before. As she regained her bearings, it dawned on her that she had no idea where she was, no idea where the closest village or human habitation was located. She could be hundreds of miles from the nearest desert village, or it could be just around the nearest hill. She fought off the despair and gloom and tried to summon her usual resolve and courage. She knew one thing for certain. She had to get going in some direction, any direction. If she just stayed, she'd surely die. So she started. Mile after mile, the brilliant desert sun was glaring down on her and reflecting off the searing sand. And she continued on. Eventually, the sun went down, and she continued to walk through the night. She went as far as she could before resting. Soon, she woke to the morning sun once again. Her throat was parched, her skin was dry and burnt, but she continued on. No food or drink, no water in sight. By the end of the third day, she could continue no longer and collapsed. But no sooner had she fallen to the ground, a vision appeared before her. At first, she thought she was just delirious, but the image was so clear, so vivid, so real. And as it became clearer, she realized it was a jinn. And the jinn spoke, "I will only say this once. Do not despair. Do not give up hope. Just listen and do as I say, and you will survive. In the end, you will be both happy and sad. But first, reach down and pick up some sand. Heed my words and continue on." The jinn disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. It must have been a mirage, thought the pilot, but it seemed so real, so vivid. And although the jinn had only spoken briefly, the pilot remembered every word. It brought her a new sense of energy and hope. She awoke the next morning, remembering the fantastical vision she had the night before. Was it a dream? She recalled the words of the jinn. Do not despair. Do not give up hope. You will survive. Pick up some sand. She reached down and picked up a handful of sand and continued on. Mile after mile, the hot desert sun was ablaze in the sky. The heavy, dry wind ripped over the land. She continued on. And when she once again reached the point where she could go no more, at the top of a dune, she fell and tumbled down the other side. Lo and behold, she stumbled upon a village in an oasis, upon a mysterious vision from the night before. Upon seeing the condition of this unusual stranger emerging out of the desert, the villagers came out to help her. They gave her water and rest and food. She had made it. She had survived. Now that she was replenished, her thoughts drifted back to the mysterious vision from the night before. Was it real? She reached into her pocket to pull out the sand. To her great surprise, the sand had turned into diamonds. As she thought back to the words of the jinn, a smile crossed her face. In the end, you will both be happy and sad. Yes, she was happy. She had survived. And she had a handful of diamonds. Yet, she was sad because she had not picked up more sand. So, let me ask you this. Why do you think she was both happy and sad? have mics this time. So if you take a minute to think about it, but if you'd like to respond, just raise your hand. See, we're all contemplating. Ooh, I've got a couple, all right.
Because we never seem to be happy with what we have.
I agree. As someone who struggles with this as well, sometimes when I see that the outcome could have been better, I become really upset with what I've accomplished. So,
Any other thoughts?
Technology invented planes with an injectable seat so she could parachute down.
Maybe she's happy that she's alive, but she's sad because she's not home. She's not where she wants to be ultimately.
Well, she either didn't trust the vision or she didn't trust herself.
Anyone else? Oh,
Let me try to kind of organize my thought here, but it strikes me that the message is that we all have the opportunity to pick up things along the way that may very well turn out to be diamonds, but we just don't know that as we're going through it. So that we're kind of sad when we realize that, that could have turned out so much better. And yet, we're happy that it turned out as well as it did.
Well, I'm very disappointed in this character. She gets the gift of life when she thought she was going to die. And then she sinks immediately into greed.
any other thoughts? Okay. Well, of course, I pondered this a little bit, and kind of my take on this. Well, first of all, let's take a little bit of a review. Do you know how diamonds are made? So diamonds, for those that don't know, are made of carbon. It's an element in our world, and that carbon has been transformed under intense pressure and heat, and so much so that that carbon takes on a whole new form that's both beautiful and strong. In fact, diamonds have the highest hardness of any material, well, natural material on Earth. So essentially, only diamonds can cut diamonds. Diamonds are tough, but so are we. Even through our toughest challenges, we try to remember to pick up that sand and put it in your pocket for later. Once you've made it out of that desert, out of those tough times, through those challenges, you can look back at those diamonds, those lessons that you've learned, the insights that are gained, the invaluable experiences that are had while going through that desert. And though it's hard, it has transformed you, just like the strong and beautiful diamond. So, at this time, all of our children and youth will meet their adults at the back of the sanctuary to head off to class.
The mission of Birmingham Unitarian Church is to be a free and welcoming religious community that encourages lives of integrity, learning, service, and joy. One way we live out this mission is by giving half of our weekly offering to a nonprofit organization that shares our values and addresses needs in one of these areas: environmental action, economic justice, civic engagement, and racial justice. We support a new organization each month. This month's plate collection recipient is the Wisdom Institute. It is a grassroots African-American womanhood and girlhood-focused nonprofit organization based in Detroit. It promotes gender equity, inclusivity, healing justice, and accountability in life and leadership so that all girls and women know power. Two areas of focus for their work in 2024 are housing affordability and ensuring that all eligible voters in Detroit have access to vote and their votes get counted. Let there be an offering in support of our community and organizations that build the world we dream about. This morning's offering will now be received with gratitude. Ushers, please come forward.
African American spirituals are a rich body of heritage in the American music world. This morning, Myra and I present to you one that, even though the spiritual is birthed from pain, it is full of hope and resilience and possibility. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Upon the mountain, my Lord spoke, out of his mouth came fire and smoke. Jordan River, chilly and cold, chills the body but not the soul. Yes, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. All around me, it looks so shine. I ask my Lord if all was mine. Ain't but one train on this track. It runs to heaven and runs right back. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Yes, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. I will pray.
We are a church of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. With gratitude, we dedicate this offering to the good works of our congregation and dedicate ourselves to its service. Thank you. Now it's time for joys and sorrows, and I have two. I have a joy from Mary Jo Larson and Jim Beiser. Our son, Jordan Larson, has become engaged to Elizabeth Lizzie Hatfield of Ann Arbor. He is also working for the city of Ann Arbor in community sustainability. Jordan grew up in BUC and was active as a leader in Gush. We are thrilled that we are close by to both our grown children and their delightful partners. We have a sorrow. I am sorry to report the death of Marilyn Webster, a longtime member of BUC. Marilyn was living in California with her daughter, Anne, when she died. Marilyn lived a full life and deeply loved to be with family and friends. Her zest for life was inspirational. Ed Sharples. We come now to the time in our service set aside for spiritual practices. New this year, we are including an embodied practice. Research indicates that the pressure and the stress of the past several years has had an impact on our bodies and on our behavior. We have faced a lot of trauma and accelerated levels of change without enough opportunity to process or integrate what we've experienced. We've added this element to our worship services in an effort to use mind-body integration practices to help us feel centered and grounded. Today's practice is the whispered ah. This is a breathing practice. So I'm going to ask you all, we're going to be breathing in our nose and out our nose. And if you can, keep your lips shut for now. And I invite you to allow breath to come in and be aware of your nostrils and your nose as you allow the breath to come in and then out through your nose. Now I'm going to ask you to expand that awareness as you allow the breath to come in through your nose. Expand that awareness into your sinus, behind your eyes, behind your cheekbones. Now I'm going to ask you to expand it again with this next breath that you allow to come in through your nose, through your sinus, and be aware of your throat, the back of your throat, as the air moves through. And once again, I'm going to ask you to expand that awareness as the breath is allowed to come in through your nose, in through your sinus, the back of your throat, and into your lungs. Now, as you're doing this breathing, allowing the breath to come in and sending the breath out through your nose, I want you to create some space in the back of your jaw between your upper molars and your lower molars. Just allow some space to come in the back of your jaw and relax your tongue and your throat. So we allow the breath to come in through our nose, our throat, into our lungs. We relax our jaw, create some space, relax our tongue. Now this next time I'm going to ask you, think about the exhale. I want you to part your lips for this next exhale and allow the breath to go through your lips. Close your lips. Allow the breath to come in through your nose, into your lungs. Part your lips. Allow the breath to come out. Close your lips. Allow the breath to come in. Part your lips. Allow the breath to go out. This next time, I want you to think about sending the breath away with some intention. I don't want you to vocalize anything, but think about intention as if to speak or whistle or whisper. So we allow the breath to come in, fill our lungs, and we send it away through parted lips with intention. Now, I'd like you to think about a time when we've all done this. We fogged up a mirror or a window with our breath. So the next exhale, I want you to think about fogging up a mirror. And at the same time, I want you to make a little ah, just a whispered ah. So we allow the breath to come in through our nose, into our lungs. We send it away with intention through parted lips, as if to fog up a mirror. And we give a little ah. Allow the breath in. Send it away with an ah. That is the whispered ah. I use this in good times and in bad, when I've got some time behind the wheel or standing in line, whenever you need to center yourself or just feel good about what's going on. The whispered ah.
On the fourth Sunday of every month, we light candles to remember those who have died in that month in any year. You are welcome to light a candle for anyone that you're remembering this day or a concern in your heart. As you light your candle, you are invited to say the name of who you remember or any concern you have. You are invited to come forward in your own time, using the aisle closest to the choir loft. Please remember to place your lighted candle as far back in the candle holder as you can. We begin by lighting a candle from our chalice for the ones who are remembered by those who have joined today's service via Zoom. Feel free to move toward the back and come around this side. We live in a time of possibilities, great and small, positive and negative. As much as we may see our time as unique in this regard, it really isn't as unique as we may think. Just about every time is a time of possibilities. And sometimes the positive ones become reality, and at other times the very negative ones are realized. As Chris Sloan pointed out last week, we can use the past in the present to make the choices to bring about those possibilities that will make this world a better place for everyone. In honor of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, observed by the UN yesterday, let us remember, as George Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
This translation is Love and Hate. It's in Spanish. I thought I could conceal my sorrow so that it might be so deep as to be imperceptible to the world. This secret love is enkindled in my soul, and it's not because I glimpse the grief hidden within me. It's in vain when it is glimpsed by someone else that is not separated from that which is love. And this is the punishment I now suffer, to feel my soul filled with love for something that has forgotten me, while a hopeful light grows in the shadows of my life.
Pensé que yo sabría ocultar la pena mía, porque estar en lo profundo no alcanzara a ver al mundo, este amor callado que un bajo malvado en mi alma encendió. Y no fue así porque él vislumbró el pesar oculto en mí, pero es en vano que vislumbrara, pues el villano monstruoso ajeno de que le amara, y esta es la pena que sufro ahora, sentir mi alma llena de amor, porque hubo vida sin que una luz alentadora surja en las sombras de mi vida. Pensé que yo sabría ocultar la pena mía, que por estar en lo profundo no alcanzara a ver al mundo, este amor callado que un bajo malvado en mi alma encendió. Y no fue así porque él vislumbró el pesar oculto en mí.
Friends, we gather today to explore a potent force that has fueled humanity's progress and shaped our individual journeys, the spirituality of possibility. Possibility whispers to us in the quietest corners of our hearts. It calls beyond the limitations of our current circumstances, urging us to envision a world that is more just, more compassionate, and more aligned with our deepest values. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition has always embraced this spirit of possibility. From the courageous individuals who dared to question dogma and seek a more inclusive faith, to the countless communities across the globe working tirelessly to create positive change. We have consistently drawn strength from the belief that a better world is possible. But the spirituality of possibility is more than just a hopeful sentiment. It is a call to action, a challenge to actively participate in weaving the fabric of a better future. It asks us to embrace curiosity and open our minds to new ideas. As Unitarian Universalists, we are encouraged to explore diverse perspectives and challenge our own assumptions. This openness allows us to see the world through fresh eyes and discover new possibilities that may have previously been hidden. It asks us to cultivate compassion and empathy. When we connect with the suffering of others, we are moved to take action to alleviate it. This compassion fuels our commitment to social justice, environmental sustainability, and other important causes. It asks us to nurture courage and perseverance. The path towards a better world is rarely smooth. We will encounter obstacles and setbacks along the way. But by drawing strength from our faith and our community, we can persevere and continue to strive for a better future. It asks us to celebrate the power of connection. We are not meant to walk this path alone. By connecting with others who share our values and our dreams, we can build a powerful force for positive change. The spirituality of possibility is not about naive optimism or ignoring the challenges we face. It is about recognizing the immense potential that lies within ourselves and within our communities. It is about having faith in our ability to create a better world, even when the odds seem insurmountable. In the words of the Unitarian Universalist minister and author Frederick Buechner, the world is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be lived. Let us embrace the mystery and embrace the possibility.
What did you all think about that first reading? It draws well on our UU principles and on the way we engage in a changing world. Possibility can come with both opportunities and dangers. Thank you, Sean. Raise your hand if you have ever watched the game show on Jeopardy on TV. All right. I enjoyed watching it for years. I liked how the show presented an answer, and we had to figure out the question. We UUs are really good at producing questions. When I consider what Sean read, I think of it as an answer. what's the appropriate question to get to that answer? Here's my take. Could you please compose a sermon of 5 minutes in length with the target audience of Unitarian Universalists on the topic, the spirituality of possibility? I've been playing around with what is called generative artificial intelligence, AI. You may have heard of ChatGPT as one of those generative AI tools. Just about every one of the big technology companies has come out with their own version of this. I use Google's version of this software that generates answers to questions based on having been trained on a huge set of information on the World Wide Web. So, I typed my Jeopardy answer in as a question to see what it would tell me. Could you please compose a sermon of 5 minutes in length with the target audience of Unitarian Universalists on the topic, the spirituality of possibility? In less than 30 seconds, this AI tool had produced what Sean read to you. It would have taken me at least a couple hours to write it. Let me restate this. Sean did not write it. I did not write it. A computer wrote it. Could you have even imagined this as a possibility a year ago? Sometimes we only find out that something is possible when it happens. That can feel very frightening, or it can feel very exhilarating. But as some have said, if you do not feel fear when you realize what this technology can do, you are not paying enough attention. Do not worry. This is not a talk on artificial intelligence. That will come on March 17th at the BUC Humanists meeting. Oops, a little self-serving plug, sorry. But I do want to use this to dig a bit deeper into possibility. We tend to think of possibility as something positive that we hope will come in the future. Sean's reading did an excellent job of challenging us to be open to those kinds of possibilities. It also challenged us to do the arduous work to make these possibilities come alive, to be part of the solution, as we say in our congregational covenant. I believe that many worthwhile possibilities don't necessarily come about through individual effort, but rather through connections with others, and we should celebrate those connections. There are also negative possibilities. For the example, the possibility that democracy is taken over by an authoritarian leader. While this is a different kind of possibility, what we do about it is the same. We need to recognize it, figure out how to be part of the solution, work with others to prevent the negative possibility from happening, and celebrate the connections that we make as we work together. But what about a possibility that is both positive and negative? One that might have both opportunity and risk at the same time. On December 17th, 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright made the first controlled, sustained flight of an engine-powered, heavier-than-air aircraft at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Thank you, Wikipedia. Think of how we can see people face-to-face almost anywhere around the globe in hours rather than weeks or months. And then by 1916, only 13 years later, Baron Manfred von Richthofen from Germany and Eddie Rickenbacker from the United States were up in the skies over Europe using this technology as a new way to conduct warfare. And on August 6, 1945, the US dropped a single bomb from an airplane on the city of Hiroshima, ending the lives of 100,000 people. Was bringing about engine-powered, heavier-than-air flight the realization of a positive or a negative possibility? On May 25th, 1961, President John F. Kennedy announced before a special joint session of Congress the dramatic and ambitious goal of sending an American safely to the moon before the end of the decade. Just a few years later, on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong took the first step on the moon. The focus on space travel in the 1960s, including the development of geosynchronous satellites, led to far-reaching positive consequences. I can find my way to just about anywhere by turning on a mapping program and asking for directions because of these geosynchronous satellites that can tell us where we are instantly. But 50 years after Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, both the US and China now have a military division called a Space Force, so that what was accomplished in the skies by an Air Force can now expand the battlefield to include the entire world. Was spaceflight the realization of a positive or a negative possibility? At the turn of this century, Google developed a road to profitability with its search engine through the use of personalized advertising. Shortly thereafter, Facebook launched a social media platform based on the same funding model, with the added feature of having accumulated more personal data that it could sell to its advertisers. With no regulation of data collection, both companies keep legal ownership of the personal data they acquire about us. So, while this technology enables me to communicate with family and friends who live in other parts of the world, it also enables other kinds of things to take place. For example, by zeroing in on what I look at and search for, social media can stimulate the worst of my fears. Coupled with connecting people who tend to think alike about the same content, the continued development of different forms of sharing platforms has enabled the exacerbation of a polarized society. Is social media the realization of a positive or a negative possibility? And last year, along came ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. From just these examples, I think that we can see that some of the biggest possibilities can result in both positive and negative outcomes at the same time. And so we see two kinds of responses. One response is to immediately stop any further development, while the other is to bring everything into existence as quickly as possible. The answer does not lie in either or scenarios. Instead, what if things could continue to move forward with appropriate guardrails? Unfortunately, it seems as if such actions are particularly difficult in a polarized society such as ours. Are we going to collaborate with people with whom we disagree in order to tackle these really big issues? Surprisingly, however unlikely it may seem, there are a few senators who are working across the aisle to address the great risks in social media. But meanwhile, the MAGA Republicans in the US House of Representatives continue to pursue a strategy of focused polarization. When it comes to an issue like immigration, they would rather prove their point that only their side is the right one so that the extreme elements of their base re-elect them, rather than work towards a compromise solution before the fall elections. Unfortunately, this rush to condemn anything but my one right way can be seen on the left as well. For example, under the banner of so-called social justice, students have pushed college administrators to constrain free speech and only allow people who think like the student activists to speak on the campus. We can navigate the complexity of society's biggest issues only if we can figure out how to reach across divides. Even more regrettably, I see signs of this attitude, this inability to engage with people with whom we disagree in the UUA. For example, we are in the process of changing Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, which in part currently states, quote, "We strive to be an association of congregations that welcome all persons," end quote. The proposal is to change this to, "We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values." Why is it so important to add the words, "who share our values"? Like student activists who want to constrain free speech, there seems to be an implication that we only want to engage with people who already think like us. I'm currently reading How to Be, Life Lessons from the Early Greeks by Adam Nicholson. One chapter is about the philosopher Heraclitus, who said that you can't step into the same river twice. Heraclitus calls us to remember that the only constant is change. Heraclitus immersed himself in the milieu of early Greek democracy, while also observing the dynamic tension of opposites within the constant of change. Nicholson writes, and I quote, "These were important ideas: a city government in which competing factions remained in cooperative tension could be productive and creative. One in which factional conflict broke out, a situation called in Greek stasis, would be the breakdown of civic order. The emergence of a tyrant from the mass would be the imposition of singularity, which was inherently unjust. Only the first of these, a dynamic, harmonic, and conflictual multiplicity in which solutions were never final, could guarantee wholeness. What seems to be wrong with politics, the chronic condition of disagreement, is in fact its virtue." End quote. What are the best practices for the spirituality of possibility in this complex, fast-moving world? I end by challenging myself, and you as well, if you agree, to do the following. Speak with and actively listen to people who oppose your view of the situation. Like a good member of a debate team, try to argue from the perspective of the other side. Yes, this practice makes one a stronger debater, but perhaps it can present new possibilities that are not currently visible from either of the two contrary sides. And 3, work toward compromise solutions that establish guardrails for our complex problems. Thank you for listening. I hope you found something of value to take with you today.
Well, let's think on that as we join together in song. Your version this time, Every Time I Feel the Spirit. Please rise in body or spirit. And join us number 208, Every Time I Feel the Spirit.
Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Yes, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Up on the mountain, I got smoke. O'er the mount came fire and smoke. All around me looks so shine. Ask my Lord if all is mine. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Yes, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. The river Jordan runs right cold, chills the body, not the soul. Ain't but one train on this track, runs to heaven and right back. Every time I feel moving in my heart, I will pray. Yes, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray.
Go now into this world as a beacon of hope and joy. Go in love, go in peace. Now that our worship has ended, our service begins. May it be so. Amen.